All right, everybody. Just want to welcome everybody to the webinar. Appreciate you all being here. I hope everybody's staying safe. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to go over some of the more advanced reporting features that we have in the system. Really what we're going to cover is going to be how to group reports and create summary reports, how to break down your data into different sections. So we'll go over that. And the second half of the webinar, we're going to cover the labels. We're going to go over how to set up labels, what areas we have in the system where you can print labels from, and the different types of labels that you can print. So let's go ahead and get started. And the typical example that I like to use, because it demonstrates a lot of the techniques that we use for grouping and summarizing your reports, involves creating a commission style report from your shipping documents. Everybody loves to create reports for sales, right? And the shipping document is definitely the #1 document we want to use when we're trying to look at our sales, any types of reports for our sales figures. So as you can see over here, we've got sales reps in the system. And what I want to do is I want to be able to break down my sales by sales rep, what items they're selling, what their totals are, so I can come up with some type of commissions that I'm going to be paying them out. And I want to create a summary report that's going to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to head over into the report designer, and I'm going to look for a good base report to start with. I'm going to start tearing that report down and then rebuilding it for what I need. And when it comes to the shipping documents and data involving them, the best option is going to typically be the ShipDoc log. That report has all the details from the header level to the items to bins to lot and serial numbers. Pretty much every piece of data is going to be available on the ShipDoc log. So the first thing I want to do to start making my custom report is click on the copy button here at the top and put in a name for it. Sure. So back at it. So here we've got our name for the report. I'm going to click on OK. And now my report becomes available. As soon as I create a report here in the designer, if it's a report that is not specifically designed to only print off of documents, like a form style report, it will immediately start to show up in the main report menu for that section. So over here now I'll have the webinar commission report showing up. So as soon as you do that, it just starts to show up and become an option here. Now what I want to do is I want to start to get rid of a lot of the information that I know I'm just not going to need on this particular report. I don't need to know whether it was shipped. I don't need to know the terms, and all I can have to do really is click to highlight and press the delete key, or I can kind of just grab them with my mouse, just like I'd be grabbing some files in Windows, and then delete, delete, delete. And what I want to keep is I want to keep the customer. I want that information. I want the sales rep. I want that information. And I am going to want to have some item information. So I'm going to get rid of some of these line numbers, sales order, and invoice number. I'm going to summarize my items. So I'm going to have it broken down by sales rep, and then for each customer, the total items that they're selling them for whatever date range I want to pick. So I'm going to leave the item in the description. I'm going to change quantity shipped. I'm going to click on this little properties icon right here just to change the caption of that header. And we'll just call it quantity. And we can get rid of the back order. We can get rid of the cost, the total cost, and the dependency. And so now we're really just focused on the item, the description, the quantity, the price, and the total price. Now I'm going to do the same things. And these are the headers to the columns right here that I'm messing around with. I'm going to do the same thing down here to the fields and just highlight and delete the ones that I don't really need. And we're not going to be worried about lot or serial number information, so I'm going to get rid of those as well. Memo information, don't need that. Alright, now to get started, I want to start setting up the sections of my report so that they match the way that I want to structure my data. You can see here in the sections I've already got a report header and a page header. And that's not really anything that I want to mess around with too much. All that's going to do is have anything that I want to print at the beginning of the report or the beginning of each page of the report. I can go ahead and change the name of this to have the actual name of the report as well. So I'm going to highlight this where it says ship dock log, and I can change the caption to be commission report. And now I want to start adding new sections to this report for how I want to group it. You can see here right now it's got a header for the document number. It's got a header to summarize the line by line number for each line item on shipping documents. But what I really want to do is I want to group it by the sales rep, and then by the customer, and then by the item. Okay, so we're going to summarize. First, we're going to group by the sales rep, then the customer, and then the item. And I want to hide, anytime I'm doing a summarized report, I usually want to hide the details section. So I'm just going to drag that all the way there so it's hidden. Or if I wanted the details, I can say this section, let's make it invisible so that nobody, nothing will ever cause it to start to show up. And I know I'm going to have 3 areas that I'm going to have data to summarize. So I got to add one more section. So I'm going to right click. I can right click on any of these sections and go to insert a new grouping header / footer. So now I've got my new one right over there. Now I'm going to start to rename them and assign the correct data fields for how I want them to group together. The way the data fields work with these sections is once I assign a data field, it's telling the report only repeat and show this area when a new piece of data shows up in that data field. So if I turn this header section into my header for reps, and this name at the top is really just for reference. The key is really the data field. I'm going to change this. I'm going to find my sales rep in here. Should be here somewhere. There's my sales rep. What it's doing is it's telling the report that as I'm showing my data on the report, it's cycling through and it's displaying it, until I hit a new sales rep, don't show this again. Okay? The key to make that work is to make sure that your sorts, when we're sorting the data to display, match your sections. So if I'm going to first group by and show my sales reps, I'm going to want to come in my sort by and make sure the first thing that I'm sorting by is going to be the sales rep. My next section is going to be where I'm going to group by customer. So I'm going to repeat the same exercise. And I'm going to make sure I have the correct customer assigned, the customer field in the data field. And I'm going to, again, make sure my sort matches. And the last one I'm going to do is by each item. So I'm going to make this one my item. And the data field is going to be the item name. And we're going to do a matching sort. Alright, now I want to start to actually put the fields into the correct sections. So inside of this rep section, I'm going to want to put my sales rep. So I'm going to grab this sales rep box right here, and I don't need to recreate it if it's already on the report. Can I make it from scratch? I can. I would advise anybody watching this, if some of the basics that I'm doing, like moving fields around or resizing them or anything like that, is very foreign to you, go ahead and go back after we send out the links to this and watch the first video webinar that we did from last week that covered some of the reporting basics. And I'll just make this a little bit larger. And why don't we make it in red? Okay, so now I've got my label here for the sales rep, and this is going to be my data field that fills in the sales reps for the shipping documents I'm going to be running this report for. Now I got to start to move some of this stuff out of the sections it doesn't belong in. These item fields definitely do not belong in the customer section, so I'm going to highlight all those and cut them. I'm going to paste them right over here. I'm going to do the same thing for these headers for the items. I'm going to grab all those, and I'm going to move them down into this customer section. And we'll get to formatting those and making those look nice in just a moment. But I want to get this customer field set up nicely over here. So it's right underneath where we have the sales rep. And if I want to make it line up real nice, I'm just going to highlight all these and make sure I align everything over to the left. Looks good. And we'll make the customer show up in about blue. Alright, now for our items. Let's move our column headers up a little bit. And we'll move the item name column over a little bit. There's our description and our quantity, our price, and our total price. And it looks like we've got a line control right over here. You could always draw these with this little line icon right here. So let's just shorten that up a little bit. Nice. And we're going to bring all of our item fields aligned with one another as well. And we'll let the align function do that work for us. All right. The last piece to this report is going to be setting up the summarizing for the different fields that we want to summarize. Now in this case, we want to be able to sum up the total that's been shipped, the quantity for each item, and the total price really. We don't really need, now that I'm thinking about it, we don't need the individual price for each one. In fact, if we're summarizing it, who knows, we might have sold it at different prices to the same customer. So let's actually go ahead and get rid of that, and we're just going to move the total over a little bit more. All right, and I'm going to highlight these two fields, and I'm going to make sure this properties icon is checked so I can set up my summarizing. And what I want to make sure is that here in these summary fields, specifically the summary function, the summary running, and the summary type, that I have them all set up properly. The summary function should be sum. The summary group should be whichever section it's in. The reporting engine has the ability to summarize fields based on other grouping, but it's very rare that anything like that is set up. Generally, whichever section it's in, that's the summary group you want it to be summarizing on, so that until it runs into a new item in the section, that's when it cuts off the summary and actually displays the particular summarized data. And then the summary type should be subtotal. So we'll do that as well for this one, for the totals here. And we are good there. Now I'm going to rename these footer areas just so I know exactly which one I'm working with. It's good to do that for reference purpose. So this guy's going to be my footer item. This one's going to be the footer customer. And then we've got the footer sales rep. And what's going to go in each one of these would be the totals that I would want for that particular section. So here I'm just summarizing the total for each item. So if that particular sales rep sold the same item to a customer multiple times over that date range, it's not going to show the item over and over and over again. It's going to show the total quantity and the total amount that item was sold to that customer by that sales rep. But I might also want to get total quantities and total amounts by customer and then by sales rep. So in the footer sections for each one of these, I'm able to set up those totals. I'm going to repurpose this guy that's right over here, which was previously on the ShipDoc log. And I'm just going to move it over, I think, a little bit more. And we're going to copy it to the footer for the customer as well. And all I'm going to do is change the caption for this little label right here that says total. This one to say customer total. And we'll have this one say sales rep total. So the footers are going to match the order that the headers are in. So if we're going rep, customer, item, the footers are going to be item, customer, rep. It's going to back out the same way. And I'm going to check my summaries for each one of these to make sure that it's doing it by the correct section. So in this one right over here, we can actually see that this is for, if we look at the data fields from the ShipDoc log, it was actually summarizing the cost and the amount. Here we want to do the quantity and the amount. So I'm going to swap this guy out to have a field that matches. We're going to make sure that the item price is in here, and we're going to make sure that the item price is in here, and we're going to make sure that this guy is the quantity shipped. Now, for whatever reason with this reporting engine, it doesn't always fill in the name of the data field into the text area. It's really just for reference or display for whoever's designing the report. But if you want to make sure you're not going crazy and you're looking at the fields while you're designing them, they look like they're not right, just make sure the text box, the text property is also updated with the name of the field. It'll just make your life designing reports a little bit easier. Oops. Or you could even put in anything else that you want. So if to you it means something else, whatever you want to put in the text property works just fine. So now we've got all these totals. We're going to make sure that this one is summarizing on the customer section. And we're going to make sure that the sales rep ones are summarizing on the rep section. And let's get rid of this grand total. And we're just going to collapse that. Now, the last thing I want to do here is I want to tell the report that each time that we're reporting on a new sales rep, let's have a page break. So we're never commingling more than one sales rep on the same page. And what I'll do is I'll come here to this footer for the sales rep, because this is the last kind of piece where the sales rep data ends. And I'm going to say after we print one of these sections, let's do a new page right after. So every section has the ability to specify whether or not it should have a page break before or after. And so we're just going to set it to after so that when it's done with the sales rep, it's going to go ahead and pop it onto a new page. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. And let's actually let's make sure our sorts are saved. It's always good practice to save your sorts. And we're also going to add a filter here. We have one where we only want to look at ones that have sales reps. So if it's like a house order or it just doesn't have a sales rep assigned to it, we're not really so interested in that. Let's see here. Has sales rep is yes. And then we're going to save filter. Always save your filters and sorts on the individual screens if you want them to stick to the report. And then in modify design, we're going to actually save the overall report. Now that we're done, we're going to come into our reports menu. We're going to find our report. There it is. Let's see if we can get it to run. And initially when you run a ledger style report, it's going to run with a date range that's month to date. That's just the default. I can always come into my filters and I can remove that. If you have a report that's printing that way and you need it to be modified, you can let us know. We can take a look at that for you. Sometimes we have options to remove that and have it go by extended date ranges or not have one at all. You can see here actually the description is kind of getting cut off on one of these items. If you ever notice on any of your reports that some of the information is getting cut off, it could be a property called can grow on it is set to false. We do cover that in the other webinar. And that's only if, for whatever reason on a report, you really don't want the field to stretch any larger than it is. But let's go ahead and set that to true so that we can see the full description. And now you can see how we've got, here's our sales rep and the customer that they were selling to. And here's a list of all the items they sold them, along with the quantities and the price and the total amount. And you can see here at the bottom, we're going to be totaling everything up. Now it looks like this sales rep only sold to this customer, so we've got the total for the sales rep as well. And then as we scroll through the different pages, it'll break down the different reps and the different customers along with the total sales that they have for each individual customer and item. All right, so that covers that. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the questions. Mike, any questions?
Yeah, we have a few of them. Right now, the first question was, can you get data from QuickBooks to see if they're paid? In other words, only have the commission show up if the invoices have been paid.
That is a good question. So if you want to do that, currently All Orders does not support that type of synchronizing. It does happen to be something that OrderTime supports, which is, if a lot of you probably know, that's the online version of All Orders. But All Orders does not support that. So what you would have to do if you want to do something like that is you have to run your payments through All Orders. If you're familiar with All Orders, it's with the transactions, it's really a one-way sync. We do support putting payments in even after the ship doc has posted over in the invoices in QuickBooks. It's not an optimal solution, and it could be something we'll support in the future. But right now, if you wanted to know for sure if an invoice was paid, you'd have to initiate that payment through the All Order system and let us push that copy of the payment into QuickBooks.
The next question is, why is your report name in the page header section and not in the report header section?
So if you look at this report that we've run, and I scroll through the pages, if I was going to print this out or make a PDF, I can see the name of it on every single page. If I don't want to be bothered with that, I could take this page header information and take it out, just cut it. And we could expand the report header and drop it in there. And now when I run the report, I'll have it on the first page, but not on any subsequent pages. So it's really just a matter of how you want your report to display.
And we have one, what about if there are returns? Will it back those out?
Yeah, so if you want to include returns, so it will subtract those, you can either remove this transaction type filter altogether, or you could change it to include customer returns. But that would be either way, because the ship doc log report does include both returns and shipping documents. So whether you change the filter to include both or just remove the filter altogether, that will do the trick.
And do we have the ability to set page orientation?
Yeah, the page orientation is going to be here. If I go into the designer and I click on this icon right here, so there's a very specific distinction between this guy over here, this little hand with the paper. This is to view the properties for individual controls within the report. This icon right here, where if I hover over it, it says report properties, and sometimes you just gotta wait a minute. That allows me to change the paper size, and that's really typically only going to be for labels, for label printing. We might get into that. Some margins, and really orientation is probably the only reason most people come in here. That's where you could change it from landscape to portrait.
And could you show one sales rep and all customers, like an example of that?
So I could come into, if I ran the report, I could go to a single. I think the easiest thing to do would really be just to come here into the filters, and then I would find the sales rep field, and I would select the specific one that I want to filter on. So I just want to run the report for this one particular rep, and then it would show me all the customers, a breakdown of the customers for that particular sales rep.
That's all the questions for right now. You can continue.
All right, so let's talk about the labels and what options All Orders has for the label printing. So to get to the label design area, I'm going to click on Design Reports. And as soon as I get in here, I'm going to swap from the Reports area to the Labels area. This is where we have all the different labels. And you might see some labels and some things in here that you don't see typically on your copy of All Orders. I've got all sorts of stuff, I've set up, played with over time for all different types of workflows and users. So don't be surprised, and feel free to ask about anything that you that I might have that you don't. What we try to do is have an option to print labels anywhere where you might be putting inventory into the system or taking it out. Primarily when you're receiving inventory, so we have labels for receiving documents. So after you receive the inventory into stock, you can print off labels based on what you received. Work orders, so if you are doing production and you're producing items, being able to print new labels for the items that you've produced that you're putting into inventory. And then shipping. So as you're shipping inventory out, if there's a particular label you want to stick on the products that are going out the door, you'll be able to print it out from the ship dock. In addition to those are probably the three main areas. We do offer label printing for your inventory stock. So under the items area, we have an item label that you can print out. And under inventory tracking, we have stock labels that you can print out. The big difference, I get asked sometimes, what's the big difference between those? The item labels really just have some item-specific data like the name, the description. You can put the UPC, a barcode like that. But it's not going to have anything related to your inventory on it. Whereas the item stock labels can be printed out for individual units in your inventory. So if you've got lot serial numbers or bin tracking and you want to put that on it, really the lot serial numbers would be the real key. Or if you want the system to automatically print out a number of labels based on how many units you have in inventory, those are great reasons to work with the stock labels as opposed to the typical item label. Now, besides labels that might go on items, there's a couple other types of labels that we support. One is a bin label. So if you want to print out labels for the bins you have set up for your locations, there's a few screens in the system where you can scan bin barcodes, such as moving inventory between bins. If you've started to use the work order routing screen, that supports bin scanning, the count screen. So you can print these out, slap it on your rack or your shelf or anywhere where the user might be around that bin, and it is scannable. The only other area where we really have support for a label that's not involving items would be for shipping. So we've got some shipping labels that you can put on the boxes that will be outside of your shipments, the packages. We also have a package-specific label. So if you have any type of GS1 requirements, if you have to have a very particular type of label printed out, we do support package labels where it lays out all the different items inside of each carton or package. And some of that does get pretty tricky. So if you need to work with support so we can take you through how those package labels work and get the design set up for you, just let us know. Now, once I start to set up a new label, so maybe I'm going to take this receiving label and I'm going to make a copy of it. The first thing I usually want to do is double click on the new label and pick out the standard size that I want it to be. We typically are going to recommend, if you're going to be printing sheets of labels that are going to come out of your standard like inkjet or laser printer, that you try and pick one that's already got a standard size. You can see here it's got the Avery standard, the paper size is letter, and then you can just pick and choose the different formats that they have. And as soon as I pick one, it's going to resize it to match that particular size of label, right? And there's what my label might look like when I pick that particular format. Now, as you're doing it, there is the rare occurrence where you have some very customized sheet of labels where you'll actually have to come in and start adding a new label size. You're going to play with the margins down here. The pitch is the space in between each label vertically and horizontally, including the size of the label. So if my label sheet is going to have a label that's 1 inch tall and there's a ½ inch in between each labels, 1.5 is my vertical pitch. 1 would be my height of my individual label, and then the number across and down. This gets pretty tricky to do. I would advise anybody that has to set up brand new labels that aren't already existing to work with our support team to do, as it does get a little bit tricky. You definitely do want to try to stick with labels that already exist in the system. So if you come in here, you just hit the drop down, you go through the different ones, you find one, you're like, oh yeah, that looks pretty good. You go on Amazon or Staples or Office Depot, you type in that code 15662, and there's a label format for that you can go ahead and purchase the sheets of the labels. You get them in, you're ready to rock and roll. If you're going to be doing thermal labels, we're going to recommend you get a wasp or a zebra. If you're looking at those and you're just not sure what to do at all, We have a reseller, a partner who knows our software very well and works with a lot of our customers. It's Barcode Shack, so you can look them up and check it out. That's Bob Hogan, and he can take care of those label printing needs. But if you're going out on your own, a Wasp or a Zebra, we support Dymos too, but those get pretty tricky to get everything, all the wires crossed correctly, everything set up perfectly. Our support team is set up to help you design those thermal labels. The thermal label design is not as simple as coming in here and picking the sheet that you like and being ready to just go. The thermal labels, depending on the roll you get and the model, they're all so unique that we have, in our support team, we have a method that we have set up where we can come in, get the information from you on the exact style and size of your labels, and run a few magic tricks in your database and get that label set up for you. So if you've got any thermals you're planning on printing and you're not already set up for it, if you can get us that information, we can help you set up those thermal labels. You'll see down here in the bottom right corner, I get asked about this a lot, we've got this little repeat labels function. The most popular reason to have this turned on to true is if you want the item labels to repeat based on the quantity that you are pulling in. So if I'm receiving inventory into stock and there's 10 units of a particular item, over here I'll set my repeat and the design to true. I'll put the quantity in here as the field that I wanted to repeat based on, and then when I go to print it from the receiving document, it's going to go ahead and print out the number of labels based on the quantity that I'm receiving. Okay, so and any of these labels here that you see, if it's in this section, so if it's in the receiving section, if I come into all orders and I open up a new receiving document, or really any receiving document, that new label is going to show up in there, right? So just like with the reporting, the labels are going to be showing up on the documents related to the section that I generate and create that new label inside of. So in this case, it's going to be showing up inside of the receiving area. I think that mostly covers some of the basics for label design. A lot of the design work, as far as picking and choosing the fields, is very similar to the typical report design, where you would drag and drop it, or you would highlight a field, delete it, change the data field. Lots of stuff that we covered in the first webinar. You know, the only thing, the really big thing, is you can't change the width and height of the labels. That's going to be all about double clicking on the name of the label and making sure you've got the correct format set up so the system knows what size labels and what type of sheet you're going to be printing out. All right, open it up for questions. And I don't think
we had a question, where's the filter for has sales rep? But I think that was back on the reporting.
Yeah, so the has sales rep is actually one that when I was initially doing this report, the first time I did it as a demonstration, I set up as a calculated field. Okay, so let me show you how I did that. If I hop back over to the report section, and I'm going to find my webinar commission report, and here it is. What I can do, and it's not a very elegant solution, I can come into my filters area and I can go to the sales rep. And I know before, when I was showing the other asker that you could filter for one particular sales rep, I can come here and I can just highlight everything by holding down the shift key and add it. And now I'm only showing ship docs and shipments that have sales reps associated with them. But then if I add a new sales rep to the system, this filter is no longer going to be capturing that, and then I have to come in here and I have to modify my filter. So that's not a great solution. So what I did instead was, because we didn't have a standard data field for it, was I added a new data field to the system on my own under the calculated field section. Again, this is a free service that our support team provides. If there's ever a field, a filter, a sort that a report doesn't have that you'd like added, we'll send you instructions on how to do it using the calculated fields. I'm going to go ahead and drop this formula into the chat for anybody that wants it. And what I did was, so let's go ahead and remove this one. I can come into the design menu and click on calculated fields. And you can take any formula that the support team provides you with, or if you get some training on it and you learn how to create some of your own formulas. And you fill in all the information. And then you click on save. And what this particular one does is say return yes if the sales rep field on the report is filled in, if there's a sales rep for that ship doc, and return no if there is no sales rep assigned. And that way I was able to add a filter where I don't have to pick and choose specific sales rep, but instead I can just say, does the has sales rep field return a true value, a yes value? Then let's display it. And if not, we're going to ignore that shipping document, or if we're including customer returns, that customer return.
And if anyone has any questions about reporting or labels, you can ask it now and we'll try to field those.
This is a good one. So Eduardo wants to know about being able to show colored rows on the details of a report. Let's go ahead and do that. One gets really tricky. So what we'll do is we'll save that for last, and anybody that wants to stick around to see how that works, it's going to be a very tricky exercise and get very detailed. So let's see, unless there's any other questions, then I can try and see if we can knock that out. So, okay, we got a question about whether or not we can pick up details from GoShippo or UPS. As far as like the standard shipping integrations that All Orders has right now, we integrate with UPS WorldShip, with FedEx Ship Manager, and with Stamps.com. Okay, and again, this is something our support team can help you with. We do have an article online as well that covers it. So if you go to numbercruncher.com and we go to support and the knowledge base, let's type in WorldShip. There's our article that covers some of that. Now again, we understand that a lot of this stuff can get technical. We try to lay it out. If you have any type of IT person who can help out, then great. If not, then certainly we understand that as well, and we're happy to help you set it up. If you're looking for something outside of WorldShip and Ship Manager and Stamps.com, we do support another shipping system called ShipRush. So if you're interested in taking a look at that, we can show you that. And we do have a couple of users who have managed to integrate with ShipStation. I'm not sure if GoShippo, which is one you asked about, supports it, but ShipStation supports something called ODBC. So if you go to ShipStation, they have an ODBC article. ShipStation. There is the article. This is the way that you would do it would be by following their guide. It's not something that we like support as a standard shipping integration right now. But if you have any IT person, any technical know-how, or you want to just have a discussion with us about possibly trying to, link up your All Orders database, right? Because we have a SQL Server database in the back end of the All Order system, and that is a database platform that is able to share data out into the cloud and online. So a website like ShipStation, their web app, is able to tap into it. It is something that we can discuss, that we could take a look at. So just follow up with us and our support team, and we'll see if we can get you some help on that.
Can reports be exported to Excel? What is the best way to make report data show line graphs and charts?
So we do not happen to support line graphs and charts. That is something that the All Orders reporting system simply doesn't support. If you're really interested at adding that type of functionality, our advice is to take a look. Again, like we just mentioned, the back end of All Orders runs off of SQL Server. And SQL Server is able to share its data out to the cloud. So if you take a look at some of the popular business intelligence or reporting analytics platforms out there, I believe we have an article on that as well, actually. So I'm going to go back to numbercruncher.com here. And I believe it's under business. Here we go. Sharing All Orders data with business intelligence and analytics systems. We actually list a few here, links to them for some of the platforms our users have linked up with. And their specialty is getting charts, graphs, all types of user interaction where you can break down your data in a very friendly online way. If you have any type of executive team or management where they're not going into all orders, but they're asking questions, they want to see reports, they want to get insight into what's going on, it's a great way to set up an online space for them to go in and access that information. Almost all of them have phone apps as well. So all of a sudden now you get access to your all orders data and reports on your phone. So check out this article. I'm also going to put this link in the chat right here. So anybody that wants to can take a look at it. And again, if you need help getting any of that set up, we work with these business intelligence platforms all the time to help them tap into our database and point them in the direction of the data they're looking to pull in so that they can get you the charts and the graphs that you're looking for.
The first part of the question was whether it can be exported to Excel.
It can be exported to Excel.
Is that possible?
So yeah, if you run a report here, so let's go ahead and run our webinar commissions report. There's two options for the exports. The first one is the report export, right? It says export report if I hover over it, and this keeps all of the formatting. So if I export this, the most popular is PDF if you want to create a PDF copy of your report. It does support Excel as well, but it's not a data export. So it tries to keep all this formatting and the look of it and drop it in Excel. Probably not what you're looking for. Pretty much the export everyone uses for this one is going to be the PDF. If you're looking to export the data, that's going to be the next button. That's the export data button. And that's the one where you're going to want to export to Excel. That'll generate the Excel sheet with the columns and the data you're looking for so you can actually manipulate everything.
All right, I think you can go into the multicolored lines if you want to.
All right, here we go. Let's see. I can't even remember if I've done this. It's been a while. All right, here we go. So what we're going to do, let's see if we can find a ship doc that's got multiple line items on it. We can do a sales order. Let's do a sales order. All right, and we're going to come into our designer. And I'm going to move a little fast here because this is like I said, it's going to involve a number of steps. So I'm going to take my standard sales order report. I'm going to make a copy. I'll call it sales order with wine colors. All right. And in order to keep it simple, I'm going to get rid of some of these fields. We're just going to do the item, the description, and the ordered. And you can copy, we'll just do the item and the description. You can copy the method I'm using for all the fields. It takes time to get something like this set up, but in the end, it'll be worth it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make new copies, every single field that I want to be able to have this control over. I'm going to have to make copies of it in the calculated fields area for whether I want it to display with a color or without a color. Okay, so my data field is going to be the item one I'm going to start with. And I'm going to do in my calculated fields, got all sorts of stuff in here. And I'm going to do one where, let's see here. Let me just look up the easiest way to do this. Okay. So what this is doing is it's checking whether or not it's an odd or an even line number. This one's going to be even. this in the chat for anybody that wants to see. That's my formula. Then I'm going to do one for the odd. And it's saying that if it's okay. I'm going to swap this item out to item even. Oh, did I get that? Oh, I don't think I clicked save. Do that one more time. Okay, and we'll do the same thing with the description just so we get that done. What is it? Let's do. And you would copy this exact same thing for any of the line item fields that you want to do this with, that you're going to be displaying, really. Okay, so now we've got the item even field, we've got the item description, even field, and we're going to make copies of these guys. And we're going to do the odd right there, odd right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up so the even ones, let's put odd first because that's our first line. We'll make the odd ones not have a background color, so we're going to just leave those the way they are. We're going to make the even ones have a background color. And we'll just make it light gray, let's say. We got to make sure we also make sure the background style is normal. And then we want to make sure that every single one of these fields has can't shrink set to true. The idea being that our calculated field that we created has a rule to say if it's even or odd, then either show the information or don't show it. And if we have can't shrink set to true on any data field, it will poof, remove it from the report if no data is inside of it. That's the secret sauce to this whole thing. And we're just going to drop these guys right on top of each other so they're both in the same space. And we're going to save it. Let's see if that does the trick. Let's just close out of here. It won't have the report on it until we reopen it. And let's find our sales order with line colors. And voila! Did we get that right? Yeah. Let me change this to something else so it looks a little better. So by setting up some rules on the fields for whether or not they print at all, we can have the ones that do or do not have background colors either disappear or show up based on whether or not there's something inside of them. Okay, that is the approach. Now, depending on the type of form or report you're doing, we've done this in different ways for different users. This is just one example of doing it. We do it a lot where if you have like a back order, we've gotten asked by a lot of people, if I'm printing a shipping report or a sales order report and there's no back order, that's fine, show a 0 in there. But if there is a back order, not only do we want it to show the data, but we also want it to be highlighted or have a background color so it's brought to the user's attention. The same rules we applied with the calculated field to control it based on the line number, we can also do based on any other data. So based on whether there's a back order on there, we can specify whether or not we want it to show a color in the background or the foreground or something like that. But that's the basic approach that we take to whether or not we want to show something with a background color or not based on the data that's contained inside of it. Okay? And I think that will do it for today. Mike, is there anything you want to add?
I'm just letting people know I'm going to send out an email right after this with some notes from the webinar, including the 2 formulas that you put in chat and some of the links you put in chat. And the video will be up in a few days. I'll send out an email with that, or when I invite for the next one, I'll send out an email with a link. But you can also view all past webinars right here. Let me put this into chat. To view all past webinars, just head to this link, and I'll be sending out links for our All Orders knowledge base as well.
All right. Well, thank everybody again. Really appreciate everybody coming on. I believe next week we're actually going to be going over the web portal that we offer, the B2B web portal. So if you have customers who you would like them to be able to do any kind of self-service, be able to look at what you have in stock, add items to a new quote or order that they want to place without them having to call you or email you, or if it still exists, faxing you or anything like that. We should be covering that. If you already have All Orders Web, it'll be a great place to come and ask questions if there's any part of it you ever weren't sure about. So be sure to check in a couple weeks from now. We should be having an email going out for that shortly as well.
Yep, and that'll probably land on May 21st.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you all coming in. Bye now.